We put a bunch of sentences together, so we're going to move on to the next structure of writing. You put a bunch of sentences together, what do you get? Paragraph, right? And you remember the paragraph symbol. Let's say, for argument's sake, we have a 4-sentence paragraph, which frankly, in my mind, is plenty long enough. Now, the length of your paragraphs will depend on the purpose that you're writing for. Let's say you're writing to submit to a journal that has long paragraphs. Well, you have more of a right to put your information in longer paragraphs. Let's say you're writing to a journal that has shorter ones. So I'm thinking of JAMA, New England Journal of Medicine. The introductions are fairly short paragraphs. You know, you can only get 2, maybe 3 of them at most. And if you were writing for that form, then you'd follow that format. The question is now, which 2 sentences are in a greater position of emphasis than the other 2 sentences in the paragraph? The first and last one, exactly. The first and last sentences get more emphasis, attention, than the ones in the middle. So the first point here is, don't bury important information in the middle of the paragraph. It has a better chance of getting lost. If it's important, put it to the top, put it to the bottom. If we had to decide between the first versus the last, then which one of those gets more emphasis than the other? The last is a good point to make, and in fact I'll acknowledge that writing theory says that an author teaches a reader how to read a document by setting up certain conventions and by following through on them. Textbook chapters, for instance, very well may do that. They might put the more important sentence at the bottom of the paragraph. And that is for the type of writing in which the reader would read it more in a linear fashion. So, for instance, if the main idea, the topic sentence, the most important sentence occurs at the bottom of the first paragraph, where should it occur in the rest of the paragraphs in that document? Likewise, at the bottom, in the same position. I'm going to make a case, however, for the more important sentence being the first sentence of the paragraph. My analogy for the first sentence in the paragraph is a bucket. It gives the reader a context. It gives the reader a means to carry around the rest of the information in that paragraph. So by giving the topic sentence or the main idea at the start of the sentence, at the start of the paragraph, you give the reader the context like a bucket. And in that way, it's more easy to carry around the rest of the information in the paragraph, which would be analogous to the liquid in the bucket. And so the rest of the paragraph would be the information summarized by that main idea. I should add that there are no hard rules in writing so much as there are guidelines. I will say that one rule is that the definition of a paragraph is more than one sentence. That's the only thing that has to be. Now, you read the New York Times, the cover page of the New York Times, you'll notice that they violate that in almost every single sentence. They basically put a sentence per paragraph. But that's a newspaper. You're reading that on the fly, and articles in newspapers should be written so that they could basically be chopped at any point, right, to fit for the format. We recognize that the last sentence of the paragraph got more emphasis than the ones in the middle. And so I'm going to suggest that that could be analogous to a handle on the bucket. So the question is, what can you give your readers that will allow them to carry around that information in that context more easily? Our teachers did tell us that this is a place for a summary sentence. And that's a good idea. It would be kind of silly to repeat exactly what you said just 3 sentences earlier, right? I will say that I appreciate summary sentences, especially the ones that telegraph that it's a summary. For instance, in summary, da-da-da-da, or taken together, this data point for the need of da-da-da-da. But there's a little something else you can do in this last sentence that would help the reader retain the information. And that would be to suggest the importance of the idea, the significance of the idea, the relevance of the idea, and even in some cases, you might suggest what the reader is going to do as a result of knowing that information. For the most part, reading is a passive activity, and you have no guarantee that the reader is thinking after each sentence that he or she reads, why is this important to me? What am I going to do as a result of this information? A good author is going to take that extra step. Go ahead.
Can that be applied to like as a conclusion as a whole too? Because I know like some teachers want a summary, but maybe having that conclusion be like showing the importance or the significance instead.
Mm-hmm. So the question is, can this be applied to, the idea can be applied to the conclusion, like a conclusion paragraph? The idea that you might suggest the importance, the significance, the relevance, what you're going to do with it, the benefit in a conclusion paragraph, and the answer is absolutely yes. In fact, that I would argue would be the primary purpose of the conclusion paragraph. Not only suggests the conclusion of that overall paper, but the value of knowing that information. Absolutely yes. I first encountered this idea of the importance of putting, wherever reasonably possible, the significance type of sentence. I, in truth, encountered it first in sales training at the drug company. So let me tell you this story here. I had gone to the writer's workshop. I had then had a project. I made poetry videos, PTV I called it, like MTV but with poetry. I figured if MTV could make a crappy song popular, then PTV would make my poetry popular, right? So I was doing that. I was teaching at the community college here in town, Kirkwood Community College, composition and poetry. And so I get a job at the drug company. And my job was to teach this type of thing as a sales tool. But again, I needed to be groomed. And so my boss put me through sales training in 3 weeks of learning how to sell, learning how to wear a shirt and a tie, and being all corporate, the corporate headquarters of Bayer. I was paying attention this one day, and they taught us how to sell. Now, I'm using the word sell, but really what I'm talking about is framing your ideas so you emphasize the importance, significance, relevance, benefit. They put it like this. They said you have your features and you have your benefits. The features are your facts, your points, what you want to convey to your learners, your readers. The benefits are the value of knowing the facts, the significance, the relevance, the importance, the take-home message. The whole lesson in sales is that you sell on the benefits. You sell on the benefits. People remember your facts because you've gone the extra step to tell them why it's important. So in drug rep land in 1993, it would be, oh, once-a-day dosing, doctor, that's important because it leads to better patient compliance or better patient satisfaction. And then the whole idea is the doctor's going to write a prescription, and she remembers better patient compliance and then recalls the once-a-day dosing idea. Now, I'm using the word sales, and sales is not a really good word to use in the sciences, because in the sciences, you like the data to do the work. So I'm not going to use sales anymore. I'm going to say framing the information so that you hit, wherever reasonable, on the value of knowing the information. We're going to get into, in a bit, the report of original research. In an introduction, perfectly appropriate that you put the benefits, the importance, significance. Methods and results section, not the place to put these value statements. But a discussion section, absolutely, totally valid to put the importance, significance. And then, as you mentioned, the conclusion section, absolutely valid to put the benefit, the importance, significance, relevance, what people are going to do with the information. We'll go through that report of research in a minute here. So I've been talking about the feature benefit model of framing your ideas for about 20 years And then about 4 or 5 years ago, my family and I were visiting another family on the West Coast. The dad is an engineer, and he writes in the petrochemical industry. And we're talking about this, and he told me he was taught the feature benefit proof model of framing your ideas. And this makes absolute total sense for those in the sciences. You say your point, you say the value of it, you give the evidence. Or someone in one of my seminars said, wouldn't it be more logical to do the feature proof benefit in that order? And I say, that's fine, that's perfectly logical, I'm okay with that. The idea being that you do want to include both of those extra ways to help the reader, or in this the presentation skills class we're doing in a couple weeks, the speaker, remember your points.